Are we in assimilation? Are we? Is that? What do you think of that? Since you would probably know more than anybody. Is there data behind that?
I can't tell you.
That sounds like you know. Welcome to the Bet Smart podcast. I'm joined with, as usual, Jake, the player profiteer. How you doing, Jake?
Doing great, Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm glad because it's I was telling the fellas earlier, it's Mother's Day tomorrow, and my wife, her Mother's Day present was to get rid of the kids. So the kids are gone. They're at relatives' house, and they're not coming back until tomorrow. So we have a whole day ahead of us of just hanging out. We're probably going to drink some beers for the next 24 hours.
Speaking of beers, we got a special beer for our guest.
And we do have a guest here, Jason Schvach from the UK. He's out in the UK. He's originally from the States in Chicago. How you doing, Jason?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks for having me on, guys. This will be fun.
It'll be a lot of fun. We're going to learn a lot about data analytics and machine learning, and we're gonna learn a lot on this episode. We also have our producer with us, as usual, runs the whole show. He has the best lighting, Chris. How you doing, Chris?
I don't know if it's the best. I feel like I'm a ghost right now.
Well, we found out you're 97% from
that's
Scotland, so that's probably why. Maybe it's you that's creating all the light.
Yeah.
How come you get the best lighting, man?
I have no idea. I even switched the cameras and it's the same thing. So it's not the camera. I have no idea.
Jason, you can't see what you can only see us. So you can't see the behind the scenes. But we have like 4 giant ring lights up, and they're all facing towards me and Jake. And Chris has none of them, and he still has more light than us. It's insane. But it's got to be that 97%. All right, well, let's get into the show. We are gonna cover a lot today. We're gonna talk to Jason about machine learning and maybe a little bit about DFS and just data analytics. And we also are going to get into all the usual stuff like mailbags, recommendations. But first, let's get into our $10,000 bankroll. I was trying to avoid it. If you didn't know,
I don't blame you.
I was procrastinating, but we should just rip off the Band-Aid. How is the bankroll going, Jake?
Yeah, I've taken a dive. Still up 4,784, but yeah, it's taken a hit. It's just a hard time historically for me with the NBA coming to a close, the NHL is coming to a close, and then the start of baseball. I've lowered the stars down to 1 star to try to limit the damage, but it still took a hit. So the bright side is MLB is getting to the heart of the season, so there's a lot of stuff to look forward to with that. But what about you?
I'm down too. I'm down to 6,500. So combined, we're looking at like around 1,100. We're up
11,000.
11,000. Sorry, 11,000. It feels like 1,100. So our $20,000 bankroll is now at $31,000. So we're still up a little over. What is that? Like 55%.
Yeah.
But yeah, my bankroll 10,000 is now at 16,500. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, I know we have a lot of listeners that are coming on from Twitter too. So I just wanted to give the Twitter units just to give an idea just on units. And I peaked at 178 units plus 178 units, and I'm now at 93 units. So I'm almost lost about half of the units for the team bets, but still up 93 units on the year is great. $10,000 bankroll up $6,500 is great, but still feels like we need to stop that bleeding. I've also gone down to 1 stars too. Have you done anything else have you thought like maybe I need to like change anything, or are you just going to stick to the process?
Well, right now I'm just starting to ramp up for MLB pitchers, because this is a really good time. The projection softwares are all lining up to where they're not kind of fighting against each other. At the beginning of the season, the projection softwares are all over the place, and I'm trying to use 4 different ones and my own predictions for strikeouts. So I'm not really adjusting anything from here on out, but yeah, in the future, I would like to lower the stars even more than the 1 star at this time until I figure out how to tweak the algorithm. So
okay, yeah. Well, I've kind of gone down to 1 stars. I feel a little bit more comfortable right now doing 1 stars. But yeah, we're still doing good. It gets all gloomy when we start to talk about this, but we're up $11,000. So still all good.
I'd like to blame myself. So
You could be we'll move it. That's a good segue into notes.
Okay.
This is the notes that we might have to get rid of you, or
I don't know what it is with me and gambling. Like I usually like break even, but never win a lot besides that one Vegas trip that I told you guys about when I was 20 years old. Besides that, I'm either even or I'm losing. And since I started making your bets, you guys had a nice little run and I got up like 50%. And then it's just like what always happens with me in gambling. It's just like a steady loss. So I might, if this continues for 2 more weeks, just not bet anything for a month and see if I'm like a bad luck charm. And then I just won't bet anymore. And I'll still do the podcast, but I just won't bet.
Or maybe one episode we like sign on and it's just a Rams flag, and it's a little darker because you're not there. Yeah, what was that? You told us about that Vegas story on the Putter podcast with Brandon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I remember the story correctly, you lost the money anyways.
Yeah.
Didn't you lose it all?
The end of that story is I went up like $6,000 and then lost it all within 24 hours. So
ouch.
Yeah,
kind of like
maybe I just shouldn't gamble.
Kind of like what our $10,000 bankroll's looking like right now.
Yeah, it took a dive. It's been rough, but we've been here before, and we'll get through it. And I don't know. Yeah. Well, we've been here a bunch of times, and we're always going to hit cold streaks. It's just a matter of what it's the market we're in. So the game we play. Yeah,
Jason, I was telling the fellas before we went on is we've had this before. I mean, we've been doing this for years. We've had stretches where it's been like 6 months or 12 months. If you look at the graph where it goes up a little bit, goes down a little bit, but then like in a 12-month stretch, oh, wow, I lost a little bit. But we've never had such a nosedive like this in the last 45 days. So it does hurt a little bit. But yeah, we're so confident in the process that we know it'll come back around.
Yeah, just stay the course.
It's
an investment, right? Like it's a long-term investment. It's not something that it's not get rich overnight scheme,
exactly. Exactly.
like, yeah. And like Jake's always kind of talked about sometimes, you're going to have those hills and those valleys. And the beginning and ends of sporting seasons are just so tough because the beginning of seasons, you got the players are moving to new places, and new managements, new strategies happening. You don't know what teams are chemistry's working or who's gelling. And you kind of got to let that dust settle before you can start to figure out where these players or where these teams are kind of aligning up in comparison to one another. And then at the end of the seasons, you got teams dealing with injuries, teams getting ready for the playoffs, or they're resting players, or they're trying to tank, Blackhawks getting the first round pick. So it's like, the beginning and the end, it gets really tough, and you kind of have to just ride that wave out until you get to the meats of the season where you kind of can then get a little bit more consistency out of it.
Yeah, I hear you. You sound a lot like Jake when you talk. He preaches the same thing. Yeah. You guys have a lot in common. How did you guys meet?
It was so like I actually had to go back to some emails to figure out how long ago, but it was over 3 years ago, Jake. I don't know if you realize that or not. And it came about because there's this website called Stack Overflow. The big website, it's like Stack Exchange, and it's just a forum online where you can post up questions about different areas or domains. So there's like a stats one where people post up questions about, hey, I have this data set, how do I do a t-test and things like that, and people would post answers. Stack Overflow is directly related to sort of programming, sort of problems. And part of data science, since I'm working in data science, it's a combination of using computer science, computer programming with statistical, understandings. So there is a big chunk of that where you do some coding and some programming. And one thing that if you ever get into programming and you look up a question or an error comes up, Stack Overflow is the first thing that comes up on Google. But then you start posting your own questions, and Jake was a rookie on there. And one thing, there's sort of it can be intimidating to go on there because there's these unwritten rules of how to post a question, of how to ask it. And if you don't do it right, there's people on there that just bombard you and tell you you're an idiot and what's wrong with you. Yeah. So one thing that I did is I wanted to get better at coding. So I was like, if I can get to the point where if I can read a question on the Stack Overflow and I can answer it, like I know I'm progressing. So I would just constantly seek out questions that are being asked of sports data, because I'm like, I like sports, I like data. And Jake posted something along with trying to get some data off of a website. And I believe I answered it, and he came back with a comment like, okay, that's really cool. How did you do this? Or can you explain this further? And at that point, I was just like, let's just take it offline. Here's my email. Just shoot me an email. And then that's kind of just where the connection ended up happening. So then we just started emailing back and forth, and just I genuinely found what you guys were doing. So he was telling me about You Bet Smart and all that stuff. I'm like, that sounds really cool. I more than willing. I would like to help in the process. Just grew that friendship out of that.
And you've helped out a ton over the years, man. So thank you for that. That's the official appreciation for that.
I genuinely enjoy it. Jake always says like, oh man, like, I got to commentate. I got and I'm like, no. I like this stuff. Like, this is cool. Like, I want to help you guys. Yeah.
You're a lot like us. Like I love betting on sports. I love data science, even though I don't know as much, in that field, but also podcasting too. This podcasting thing, we're not making any money doing this, but it's fun as hell. It's so much fun. Like, I just show up every day, and I mean, we're not, I don't think we're going to make any money anytime soon, but maybe one day. You never know.
Right. Yeah. You never know.
So how did you get into data science?
So originally I was a high school math teacher, outside of Chicago in a little town called Cicero that I actually grew up in. So my own suburb town, I ended up teaching mathematics, and I had the opportunity to take a year to get a master's, and you obviously have to do it in your content area. So there's two avenues you can take in math, right? You can go the math theory bit, which is like, you can learn about abstract stuff and imaginary numbers. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with that stuff? You're like, right. Or I was like, I want to be able to do something with it. So just searching out applied statistics and things like that, because I'm like, okay, that'd be kind of cool. And hence the name, apply it to something. And when in the process of doing that, data sciences kept popping up, because that was the big buzz. It was just coming up. I think like previous year, it was called like the sexiest job of the next century or something like that. I'd never heard of it. But looking into it further, I saw like, okay, applied statistics. Oh, computer science programming. I'm like, that's right up my alley. I'm going to go do that. And that's kind of how I got into it. I just kind of jumped in, sort of blindly, because I had no programming background, no database background. I had the math stuff, but that was really about it. So yeah, so that's what got me into it.
Well, you're the sexiest guy that we've had on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks.
What how did you apply it? You mentioned like it's applied statistics. How did you originally like apply it to your life? Or was it just a job?
You mean in terms of where did I start using it? Or
where did you start using it?
Yeah, so it came about, I've always played with data. I liked data. I liked sports. What kind of mixed that together is obviously I'm 5'10", 160 pounds. I'm not going to be a professional athlete. What's the next best thing? Okay, well, I'm not going to be a broadcaster or an analyst. I'm an introvert, which surprisingly enough, how does an introvert become a teacher and go onto a podcast? But again, I liked numbers. I liked math. I liked that stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, I can maybe combine my sports kind of thing with the math kind of thing. So I always liked to, go on, profootballstats.com or profootballreference.com, like those websites where they got
Great
the tables site. And I can copy and paste and put into an Excel sheet and do stuff with it. And then learning this stuff just took it to the next level. So that was like, quote unquote, amateurish. And then I took it to the more professional-ish, kind of way with actually getting this master's degree. So my dissertation, and believe me, some people talk about when they do their dissertations for school and they're like, oh God, it was terrible and I hated it. I genuinely loved it. Like, I did it 7 days a week. When I went to bed at night, I was upset that I had to stop. Like, I couldn't wait to wake up the next morning and get back at it. So my dissertation was to do, I built a machine learning, and I won't go into too details with some of the other stuff, but it was a deep learning neural network. I built a framework to make predictions on weekly NFL football performance, essentially just using FanDuel points. So I can use past historical data and then predict how the players how many points they would get the next week on FanDuel. And that's
for DFS?
Yeah, DFS. Yeah, DFS. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And then part of, checking the performance and accuracy and things like that is then I would actually use those lineups and then compete in the weekly tournaments. And that was my that's what I did. Like, my Amazing. Dissertation was to play daily fantasy sports football for, 10 weeks. Like, that's what I did.
Sounds like a dream.
Yeah. It was beautiful. I loved it. Loved it. Every second of it.
What was the what was the outcome? What did the data show? Did it work?
Yeah, I mean, it worked in the sense that if I went to some of the other websites, can I say other websites on here? I don't
sure.
know. Yeah. Okay. So rotowire.com.
Oh, don't say
grinders.
that. No, it's totally cool.
Yeah. Obviously they're always posting their projections. And I could go to those websites and you can pay the money to get that stuff, and my projections were comparable to those. So what I was getting out of it was I'm producing the ones that are professionals are producing, slightly different in some respects. That there was some, variance in some of those, but yeah. So in that respect, it worked. In terms of optimizing the lineups, I was creating those purely based off of the rules of daily fantasy sports and the projections that I were making. So that was kind of just that was a kind of a crude or a brute force. Like, that wasn't using machine learning. So in that respect, sometimes it didn't work. There was a week. So when I was doing it, I only got to do the last part of, I think it was the 2018 or 2019 season, because I was already deep into the season when I was starting the dissertation. It was the next season that I got a full season out of it. There was 1 week where my lineups, we finished 6th overall in those big tournaments. And then in that same week, I had another lineup that finished 15th or something like that. So essentially what that did is it allowed me to just play the next season free. It was just house money that I was playing with the whole next year. So yeah, so it did work, but I mean, I still have to get a 9-to-5 job though. So
yeah, it's tough to make a living off of something like that. But but you so you joined in one of those big tournaments, and that was a season-long tournament?
No, it was week to week. So it just did it.
Oh, weekly. Okay. I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
So
every week,
one of the weeks. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So every week I'd produce my projections. I'd run it through my algorithm of the optimizing the lineups with the salaries. And then, one of those weeks, boom, 6th place. And then it was 2 weeks later, I got a 15th place finish too. So got a little bit of a bump there. The tough thing with the daily fantasy sports in those big tournaments is it's really top heavy payouts. Like you have to finish first, second, third. Like I finished 6th, still good. But it's not that, it's not the $1 million,
Did you ever
payout.
test it out? Did you ever test it out on like a 50-50 or a heads up strategy?
I could do that. I mean, I have like when I run it the next week, I'll pull the points so then I can see which lineups should I have run, or which ones would have worked, which ones didn't. So I had all the point totals for all the teams. So I can go back and check, be like, okay, what was the cash line for the 50-50s? But yeah, I never ended up doing that because I'm like,
I have a
fun in
question.
that?
So,
yeah,
essentially, as you,
my biggest, I'm sorry, Jake, but my biggest fear is doing the 50-50s and then getting first place.
But I want to rebuttal that. You said, what's the fun in that? If you do a ton of heads ups and 50-50s at a certain amount of money, and it's just like a bet, it's kind of like how we do a bet at minus 110, and you make money off of that. Once you start making money, it's fun.
Yeah.
Or
it makes it fun.
Or you do a ton of 50-50s and you also do the $1 million one.
Yeah. And then kind of mix it in. Yeah.
I was curious.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Were you able to back test that like 5 years back or 10 years, or is this more current data you're using?
It's tough to do the back testing with that because you need to have the salaries, the FanDuel salaries that they post, and that is tough to find. I can't find that in most places. I can usually find the salaries posted somewhere, but it's just for that week and it's not stored anywhere, and you can't go back and get it. I'm sure there might be data sources out there that do it, but it just costs tons of money to do it. And I'm just an individual amateur playing, and so I can't afford that. So
good point.
Yeah, there's one that I know of, since we're saying other websites.
All right.
There's one that I know of. I think it's called sabersim.com. I can never remember the name, but that's it. sabersim.com. But like you said, it's expensive. It's like $110 a month.
Yeah.
So you got to pay like $1,200 a year, but it keeps all of your data for DFS, and it'll show. You can go back and check the log to see like what everything is. But yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Do you do any other? Do you do DFS now?
I want to. I have a system. Sort of, I've started to start a system set up to do the NBA, but then since it got to the playoffs, I just kind of ran out of time. So no, but I do want to do those. Just because it's something that you guys talked about too in one of your really early podcasts is that how hard it is for the NFL with such a small sample size, right? Machine learning just requires tons of historical data to try to make a projection, and then it's 17 games, for the NFL. And it's just like, and then again, it's sort of those first 3 games you're trying to figure out, okay, well, new wide receiver, new offensive coordinator, how's that going to work? And is this defense really as good as they are? Or they just played the Jets and the Dolphins and then the Jets again. Like, so that was like, that's the tough thing, is like figuring out which ones are really the good plays, week by week. Because that's another thing too. You're trying to with at least the NFL, quarterbacks, running backs tend to be pretty consistent. You can get those wrong and still be okay, right? Because the quarterback will score right around 20 points. Sometimes they'll shoot up. The only thing you don't want is the quarterback who gets hurt after one play and then he gets 2 points. But it's wide receivers are highly volatile. Tight ends, higher volatile, but you only have to pick one tight end. So that's the nice thing with that. The defense is in special teams is kind of what puts you over the top, because you're trying to pick that one defense that's going to score that defensive touchdown. Because that's, not many, there's not as much of a spread, or I should say there's more of a spread of the distribution in the defenses that other players will pick. And maybe one of those defenses is going to be the rock star and the rest will just be consistent. So that would give you an advantage over it. So it's just trying to figure out all that stuff. And it's hard to do at the beginning of the season.
Let me ask you this. If you're in a season-long fantasy team, I mean, what you're talking about with DFS, you get to like pick a different team every
Absolutely.
week. But if you're in a season long, one of my favorite strategies is not getting married to a specific defense. So I don't even like, care what defense I have. And I just like find a defense every week, a new defense every week. That seems to go on. It's in par with what you're saying.
Absolutely. Because what I'm doing is I'm basically looking for two things. I'm looking for the defense that gets a lot of turnovers, because then they can have the potential of doing a pick six or a fumble for return. And I'm looking for where it's matched up against an offense that just turns the ball over.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to find those two combinations and just hope it kind of pays out, because it's nice to get a shutout, but if that defense doesn't score a touchdown, then you're almost at a wash with another team that maybe gave up 3 or 4 points. And it's like that's the one area that kind of puts you over the top, and that's what won me that 6th place finish. It was the Minnesota. Like, it's funny when you talk about like these betting, like you always remember that one play or that one team, like, yep, that's what did it. But it was the Vikings, and it was like the other team was on a 2-minute drive to end the game, and the Vikings got a pick six, and then it catapulted all my lineups with the Vikings in it, to top 10 finishes. So that's what did it.
Well, in our fantasy football league this year that we're in, this is going to get a little dark. Damar Hamlin cost me the championship. So I ended up being co-champion, but that game I was playing against Joe Burrow and one other guy, and Burrow comes out, throws a touchdown. It looks like I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose the championship. And then Damar Hamlin gets that. What happens? They cancel the game. So technically I won the championship, but because I was a nice guy, I was like, I'll do co-champion with you. So, and this league is 19 years old. We're in our 19th season. I hadn't won it since year 3. So it would have been my first championship in that league in 16 years. And I got to share it with someone else.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget about that.
Yeah. Can I just say it's May and we're talking about NFL football. I love it.
Well, you said about NFL that there's not a whole lot of statistics. And so it's hard to find, it's hard for machine learning to learn if there's not a whole lot of data. Yeah. So that makes me think that is baseball the best sport for machine learning?
I think NBA, you're going to be pretty good with machine learning, just because it's pretty, you do get pretty consistency out of NBA. Like, you'll have the random guy throw up 50 points, but for the most part, mid-season, when the guy's averaging 28 points a game, they'll get about 28 points, But yeah, baseball so statistically heavy. You got all those matchups that you're looking to see, and I'm sure Jake and maybe his player props of looking at where players where they're hitting in the lineup, right? If you're putting a DFS together, I want players that are hitting first, second, third, or fourth, because they're going to have the most at bats, right? I don't want the guy hitting ninth. And then also guys hitting first, second, third, less likely to be taken out of the game later, unless maybe it's a running situation. But if that's the case, then it's probably not a high scoring game. If you're taking out your number 3 hitter because he's on first base and you need that run, it's probably a low scoring game. They're just trying to squeak out a run. So things like that I think make sense. And I mean, there's a reason they have sabermetrics. There's a reason Moneyball turned into a movie. Like it works. I still cringe a little bit at some of the traditionalists or old timers who say, saber, you can't go by your gut. That's how you manage. And White Sox fan here, ask how Tony La Russa, how that worked out the last 2 years. So, and no discredit to Tony, the Hall of Famer, but it's a new time. It's a new era. Data is the new gold. You have more data, you can store it, you can process it faster. There's a reason it didn't happen years ago, because you couldn't do all that stuff. And now that you can, it's just on the cusp of, I think, growing even more. ChatGPT is a perfect example of that. I think that's we're going to go back and look and say, I don't know how old you guys are, but I remember when the internet came out, right? And people were like, internet, just a fad. It's just going to pass us by. Yeah, AOL. Chatbot I think that's the next thing. Like, people are going to be back. When that came out, that's when everything sort of flipped and turned. So
So true.
We're so old that we did fantasy baseball in high school on paper.
Oh, so did I. Yeah. Rotisserie league.
Yep.
And it was literally.
Did you take out the newspapers and
Yes.
total up the stats and everything?
So we did one, and it was a rotisserie. So at the end of the year, you add everything up, and we left it to each other to add it up. And our buddy Jason ended up with like 3 times as many points as everyone else when he turned in his stats. And we're like, Jason, there's no way that's correct.
Oh, so everybody kind of like checked each other. Everybody did it themselves.
Yeah,
and then
you
brought
kinda,
in the paperwork.
Yeah, and then
that's a good idea.
Dolly, Jason, his was like so much more than everyone else. We're like, dude, you got to double check your work.
That's a great idea, because the way we did it at Marina is I was in charge of doing that, and then so I brought it in and I won, and nobody believed me. But I needed everybody else to do it too.
Yeah,
because I was like, Jason, like who knows? They could think I'm cheating. You know?
Oh, so I had a question. So you're saying baseball is the easiest, obviously, because you get that larger sample size, and the basketball's second. But is it harder now that players are resting a lot more?
In baseball, probably not. I mean, just
no, in basketball. In basketball,
yeah, like when LeBron wants to take a day. I suppose, yeah. I mean, I guess you could say that, but again, I think it's, I haven't tested it, I haven't looked into it, so this is just purely an opinion, and it's not based on any sort of fact. But I mean, who needs facts? I don't think it would take a dive that much, unless it's such a small sample size. I think there's enough data there to have a pretty decent amount of confidence that the projections are not too bad. What would be tricky then is just sort of the keeping track of it. Again, kind of probably what Jake does before you start going into the player props. Okay, well, who's resting, who's not playing, right? Because I'm not going to make a bet on someone to do something if I know they're not. You know what I mean? So it's like just kind of keeping up the tracks of the, see who those late scratches are and stuff like that. But in terms of making the predictions in training, I don't think it would affect it all that much. But again, I don't know. I didn't really dive into that and take a look at that at all.
I noticed more of a difference with the bench, because I feel like during the year and the heart of the season, the bench players will be more around their average, but during playoff time, they don't use the bench as much. So I feel like there's a bigger discrepancy between.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing you could do, like for cases like that, like in the machine learning, you'd want to normalize your data so that you're comparing apples to apples. So like in that kind of a sense, I wouldn't make a row of data that looks at their seasonal averages. I would look at it as seasonal averages in terms of if the 48 minute played kind of a thing. Like, okay, how do they perform if they're playing 48 minutes, and that kind of can normalize it. And then it's sort of up to you. Okay, then deciding how much is that guy going to actually play. So that's kind of the way that I would look at it that's how I would form it into a machine learning kind of a model.
Understood.
So normalizing means putting everybody on the same playing field.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So one way to think of it is one model that I made a long time ago just for fun was kind of just going into the NFL draft, which is I didn't get to run it this year, which kind of sucks, but you're trying to predict what their output's going to be once they get to the NFL, right? And if you're looking at like wide receivers, there's a big difference if the wide receiver comes from a passing program or if the program's completely, they run all the time, right? If the quarterback's chucking the ball up 70 times a game, that's going to have a lot of receiving stats versus a quarterback that conservatively throws it 20 times a game. Doesn't mean that the wide receiver who gets the more yards from that 70 passing team is better. It just means that's the circumstances they were in. So you kind of have to level it out to kind of have a really comparison to, sort of say, is this guy better? Is this guy worse? Not just purely based on reception yards or passing yards. Cause like I said, it all depends on like the program and how they run their program and how they run the offense.
Is that something that machine learning does?
To normalize that?
Yeah. That's not what machine. We're talking a lot about machine learning. Like, what exactly is machine learning?
The easiest way to explain it, and maybe it's not the easiest way to explain it, but in high school, do you guys remember doing best line of fit? you get an X and Y axis, and you put a bunch of dots in it, and then you try to draw a line that fits it. Doesn't go through every point, but it kind of forms it. That's machine learning.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
That's actually a great way to explain it.
Yeah,
but it's in much more complexity, because it's not just 2 dimensions. You're talking about many features, many dimensions.
So you have all this data and all these points that are on like this chart, and the machine learning draws the line.
Precisely.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to explain it. I love that.
Precisely. And then
okay, podcast over.
What do we need to do anymore?
I know. That was just like my mind is blown.
Yeah, and there's other ways you can sort of do it too. Like so that would be called what's called linear regression. You're trying to find a precise point on that line. There's something called logistic regression, which is a classification. And that all that would do is you'd have the same sort of graph. You just say, are you above it or below it? So if you're trying to do like a player prop, and you're going to say, is this player going to be an over under, right? You can have all the data set up there, and you can have your feature as the over under, and then the machine would sort of draw in a line and say if that data point would go over or under, and it would just give out a classification. And the nice thing about that is you can also have it output a probability. So it can say, I think it's going to be over, but it's going to be, I give it a 68% probability that it'll be over. So you can kind of have a little bit of a score attached to it as well. Doesn't mean it always gets it right, but at least you have something else to hang it on to. And then you can always adjust it to give it a threshold. Be like, I don't want you to tell me it's going to be over unless it's 80% sure. And you can do it that way as well too.
So I think in my head, is machine learning and modeling the same thing? Is that similar?
Yeah, you can explain it. Yeah, it's sort of the same. But the modeling is the actually setting up everything into a training set. So what you're doing when you train a model, right? That's what's got all the dots and draws the line. So that's training a model. I mean, the whole sort of process is machine learning.
Machine learning is training a model.
Yeah, machine learning is kind of that whole process. Is you got the data, you form the data, you're creating your features, figuring out which one's the targets, normalizing and cleaning it, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Then you fit the model. So that's training it. So that's what draws the line. And then once you have that line drawn, you say, here's my new data coming in based on that line. Where's the data point going to fall into? And then that's your prediction or your inference.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
One thing in the limited experience I have trying to do predictions with machine learning, I've noticed that like just getting the data prepped is more hard than actually just running the regression or
that's kind of the work, right? That's the work that you got to do is the data prep.
Yeah, that literally is what I do every day. Like that's the job that the fun stuff, the actual getting the predictions. Sometimes you don't even get to it because if you can't get the model to train a nice accurate performance on the test data, well then there's no point in making predictions. But yeah, most of your time, I think they say like 80% of the time, I would even say maybe 90% of the time is just cleaning the data, cleansing it, figuring out what's missing, figuring out what's important, figuring out what features to include, which ones to exclude. And this is where the science part comes in, right? Because then you run it and then you see, okay, you set aside a test data set that it doesn't know, it hasn't seen yet. So then you have it predict on that test data set and see how it does. If it does well, great, you're good to go. If it doesn't, then you're kind of going back to the drawing board, and that's where the science, you're testing it. Did it work? No. Go back to the data set. Okay, let me change this. Let me change that parameter. Let me do that. Test it again. Oh, did it improve or not? Oh, it did improve. Okay, let me go back. So it's an iterative process of just trying to continuously try to improve on the model to get the best performance you can out of it.
How do you know if it does well? Just by the results?
Yeah. So what you do when you train it, you have all that historical data, right? And you set aside a big chunk to train. So that's because the more data you have it to train that it learns from, the better. So you set that aside, and then a little bit of it. So this is all known data. So what we know is the outcome. You set that little bit of aside, and you don't let the computer see it. So you train it on, it's basically like, think of it like if you were studying for a test, right? You study for a test by looking at all the practice tests, and then you get the actual test. And the actual test is what you test the performance on. So you think as the practice test is sort of, you have the answers to it, so you can kind of see, am I really learning this or not? Yeah, I got 100 on the practice test. So now when I go in and take the actual test, you feel pretty confident because you did really well on the practice test.
But if you give it the answers first, then you can't really trust that model, right? Like that's
Exactly.
why you keep the training and the testing data separate.
Yeah. So what that's called, it's called data leakage. So it's essentially cheating. You're giving it the answers, so it knows what the answers are. So when it sees new data, it's not going to get it right. And what that's called, it's called overfitting. So it's specifically fitted to just the training data, and it doesn't perform well on real life data.
One question I had.
Yeah.
So I took an econometrics class, and I know has to be a lot of care to picking your variables, your feature variables or whatever. Do you have to worry about the X variables being correlated with each other?
It depends. So there's some models. So like I said at the beginning, I did a deep learning neural network kind of framework. And one of the advantages of that is it sort of takes care of some of that stuff. So if it notices something's not important, it'll give it a weight of a 0, and it kind of just drops it out. In other models though, it can confuse the model. So you do, if you notice that there's two variables that are highly correlated, you either want to combine it into one or just drop one of them off. Like for example, like if you had, let me try to see if I can think of something.
I was thinking of one earlier, like if you're doing spinach on height, you wouldn't really want to use weight because weight and height are correlated.
Yeah. Potentially, but I mean, not necessarily always the case, right? Because again, I'm thinking in NFL, right? You can have 6'8" linemen, and you can have a 6'8" quarterback that they're going to have completely different heights or different.
Different weights.
Yeah, completely different weights. I'm thinking in terms of like if I had a data set that had reception yards and receptions, I wouldn't have yards per reception then, because that's the same. You don't need that. Just get rid of it and just keep it yards per reception or something like that.
Exactly.
You were talking about what did you say? It's deep learning neural networks.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
So what that is, it's a framework that works like your mind. So if you think of your brain, and it has all these neurons, and there's signals that it spits out at different points to make activations of different things in your body, right? To move my hand, something is triggering something else, it's activating something else. So it's based off of that sort of idea. So you have nodes, which are your features, your inputs of your data, and then from those nodes, you have what's called activation functions, and there's different types of those that would trigger a different node off. So that's what I was sort of saying there. It can potentially identify ones that are useless, and at some point say, I'm not going to activate that feature because it doesn't lead to any sort of difference in the output. It's used for very, very, very complex data sets. So it's useful in things where you have hundreds and thousands of features. So autonomous cars are built off of these things because again, what the whole idea of machine learning is, you don't want someone sitting there coding every single scenario that could happen, right? If you're trying to code how to have a car drive, you're going to have to say, if the light is green, press on the gas, but if there's someone standing in front of you, press on the brake. And if you want to go left, turn the steering wheel left. But if there's a car coming, you like all the different things that could happen, you would have to program that out. And there's millions and billions and infinitely different possibilities. Deep learning neural networks, though, is a way to sort of train it so you don't have, and that again, that's what machine learning is. It's the way for the machine to learn all those different rules without you implicitly saying what those rules are. So
the deep learning neural networks is like the computer acting, doing all the action or doing the work.
Right. Yeah. So you would be feeding it information and having it perform, and then it says, I see that it's green. The green must mean I need to go, and that's how it sort of learns. And there's obviously times where it fails because it's still kind of learning. And it's almost just like a toddler trying to learn. Don't touch a hot stove. You do it once, that's hot, and then you don't do it again. But you have to learn. You have to do it to figure out that it doesn't work or it does work.
Isn't it like basically when you try to have it make a prediction, it has no idea. So it basically all those variables are just guesses in a way. And then it looks at the output. If the output's way off, then it like recalibrates all the different variables, gives it different weights through like
exactly
back propagation, I think it's called.
That's exactly the word. Man, you do data science, huh?
Yeah. And then so then it makes a better guess, and then it's like, oh, I'm a little better.
Scott's like, who's the smart guy over there?
So then it just continually retweaks the variables until it gets the best output it can, and then you're like, all right, this model is 80% accurate.
Exactly.
What other like algorithm can we feed it or something?
Exactly. Yep, you got it.
So
you're done.
So Jason, you work at Heineken. Do you do this for Heineken? How does this get implemented?
Yeah. So I mean, the way I guess in a company you can talk about. There's really a couple of ways you can set up a data science team, right? You can have in my previous job, we were essentially it was a data science team within different areas of the business. All right. So if I use Heineken, for example, there would be a marketing and advertising data science team. There would be a supply chain logistics data science team. There would be a retail and on-trade pubs data science team, right? That's one way you can do it, where each data science team's in their own little expertise area, and that's all the data they ever work with, and that's all they ever know. The way we're sort of formed is we're a data science team under IT, so our D&T, digital and technology, and we kind of work as consultancies to different areas of the business. So we're the data science team for all of Heineken UK, and when marketing has a question, a data science question, we go off and work in the marketing aspect. When supply chain and logistics has a question, okay, we'll go and help you guys out, and then we kind of come back into our little area underneath the whole umbrella of advanced analytics. It's kind of cool in that respect that you get to go and see different parts of the business, and you're not really stuck in one little silo or typecast. It's a challenge, though, I have to learn all the different things of the business. I have to know a little bit about analytics and marketing analytics. I have to know a little bit about supply chain and logistics, and have to know a little bit about that stuff. But yeah, that's essentially what we do. Is we use data. We use the sales reports. We use customer surveys. We look at Twitter feeds. We look at how many times a click happens on a website, and then try to predict, to say, hey, this is what we think is going to happen, or hey, this pub, why do you have cider on tap? Because nobody buys it that goes into your bar. You should have some type of a craft beer on tap, or things like that. So just trying to make recommendations and optimizing stuff like that as well. The other thing I will sort of say, and I'm not trying to boast Heineken's, not trying to promote them at all, even though personally I think they have been a really good company to work for. This
episode is sponsored by Heineken.
Yeah, I got mine as well. They do have different behaviors that they try to instill in their ways of working. And one of the things is that they want to be, zero carbon footprints by, I think it's 2030 or something like that. So we do work on projects that try to do things like that, such as trying to reduce the number of deliveries, because the number of trucks that get delivered, reduce CO2 and things like that. So it's just finding ways to optimize different areas of the business to, not only save money, but do things that actually help the environment and stuff like that too. So that's kind of cool.
I have a question. So what recently happened with Bud Light?
Yeah.
So do you think that was something that just came from, their marketing manager, or do you think there was some like data driven reason why they did that?
I don't know.
That assumes that they did it on purpose.
They
probably did, but I'm just saying.
Do you think a company that size wouldn't run it through? You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at.
I was going to say, I'd have to believe it had to be a data-driven decision, because why else do you get so bold and attempt that. I can't speak on their behalf, but
okay.
You know,
I
they-
was just
they
curious.
tried it.
It's just is a curious thing that they did, and there had to been data behind the reason that they did it, I would think.
You would hope so. If they didn't,
or maybe it wasn't. Maybe that's
maybe it wasn't.
Maybe that's what happens.
Maybe
they overrode the data.
Yeah. Okay, that was off subject, but just curious from someone that's in that field. That I want to know that. So.
Because that's kind of what you were saying, Jason, is it's used a lot for marketing, like your data. And so you create a report saying this is what our data says and these are the directions that we should go in marketing.
Yeah. Like you're given a budget and it's saying, you know, you'll make as much of an influence or return investment if you invest X amount of dollar or pounds, we do pounds, X amount of pounds into Facebook ads as Y amount of pounds. So don't do more than what X is going to return, because then you end up with a diminishing returns and it flattens out. So it looks at different channels to be like, we'll invest this much into Facebook and YouTube and things like that. So yeah, it's just trying to find the best way to run your business to get the highest return of investment, I suppose. I mean, which is any business. That's how all business should be run, really. I mean, if you're not, then you're not in business.
Yeah.
I just realized something. We've been asking you questions about how to get better bets at YouBetSmart. We should ask you questions on how to get subscribers.
Yeah,
that's the question.
That's actually not a bad idea.
That just came to that realization. Well, I thought you had something.
No, I mean we're growing, but it's new, so we're not at the rocket ship we want to take off at. But I wonder if there is a way with
100%.
Yeah,
we probably shouldn't say it on the podcast. Though. I don't think Jason wants to give away his secrets.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were in the UK. Where in the UK are you in?
Up in Scotland. So I'm up in Dundee, Scotland, which is Dundee. It's they call it Sunday because it's the sunniest place in Scotland. It's 20 minutes north of the old course in St. Andrews.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And a 20-minute drive away.
Wow.
It's and it's the sunniest place. It must be where Chris does his podcast from. But how far is that from Wrexham? In the States, Wrexham's very popular. Yep. I don't know if
it's big. It's big here. Yeah.
Is it big here? Oh, big there too.
Yeah. I've there's a funny article that came out in the UK regarding Wrexham. But yeah, it's about a 5-hour drive south. So if I drive 5 hours down there, I can get to Wrexham. Which is
it big there because it's big, or is it a little bit of a joke? Or how is it like shown there?
Yeah, good question. It's big just because I think of it's just, I mean, it's TikTok sponsored. They're TikTok, right? Yeah, Expedia. They're Ryan Reynolds, and you know, it just blew up just because of the whole thing. Now, in terms of, is it big because it's a joke, or is it big because it actually is big? It's big. It's popular because of all that stuff. But I think there are quite a few people that are turned off by it. So I don't know if you guys saw that they had the, you know, so they got promoted. Yay. Right. They accomplished their goal, and they had a champion parade. Right. So they had the buses and a couple thousand people. I mean, it's a small town. Right. And it was on the BBC international, like the whole UK, it was being televised on, and there were quite a few people that were pretty ticked off. You're like, why are they showing this small town like parade for this small team who just, okay, boom, you're in football. What is it? The football league is what they got promoted to. Like, there's big, like you got Manchester City, you have all these other ones, and then Wrexham, like, why is this being televised? Like, this is BS. Like, so there are people that are kind of just, they kind of look at it and is just kind of like, this is
I could see that because they got promoted to the 4th highest league. They went
yeah.
So now they're in League 2, but like nobody cared about that any other year.
Yeah. And but then you get the flip side of it too. I'll say that as well, is like where people are like, it's really good to see a small town team, a small market, like get promoted and get as much publicity as a Manchester City or as some of those other ones. So yeah. I mean, you like everything else, you got two perspectives on it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they develop that. They're really good. They must have good data science behind their marketing because they're very good at marketing it. Here in the States, it's taken off. My wife, she's not even into soccer or football, and she's so into it. We watch Welcome to Wrexham. We watch the show, and I have to see all the stats because I even bet League Two. I bet League Two. The league that they're going into is League Two, and I bet those bets. So I watch all that stuff. But my wife's not really into it. But we had a rule where at the beginning of the season, I was like telling her because it's delayed. The show is delayed about a year. So I think it's about a year. So at the very first time when we started watching it, I knew everything that was happening, but my wife didn't. But I was like spoiling it to her. And then so this next season coming around, I go, I'm not going to tell you what happens because they got promoted. And I'm not going to tell you. And she came up to me one day and she goes, Wrexham got promoted. She she was all excited. Before the season even aired, she looked at it. Like that's how much excitement their marketing team got people into it.
I gotta watch it.
It's actually a pretty good show.
It's worth watching. Yeah, when you can get the casual fan involved, you know you're doing something right.
They must be doing something right. It probably comes from machine learning.
So I was watching an interview with Rob McElhaney, which is the other owner, and he was talking about they don't serve alcohol at the games.
Okay,
you heard that? Is that a thing over there?
It would not surprise me that it is not a thing over here. They take their sports a little bit more serious than I think we do in the U.S. Like rivalries are completely different because they come from a different place. When you talk about rivalries like Bears, Packers, it's obviously you're going to get, if you go to a game, if I go to Lambeau in a Bears jersey, I'm going to get some banter. I'm going to get some jokes and stuff like that. But as long as I'm respectful, right? For the most part, I think it would be all good, tongue in cheek. Sure, you're going to see a few drunks maybe beating each other up, but
that's just at the Raiders games.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but for like in here, teams are also wrapped up into religion, so it's much more than just a rivalry between competing cities, or even in Glasgow, there's Celtics, Rangers, two teams, and they're based on religion background. So like you grow up that fan, not because your fathers and your grandfathers were a fan of it, but because they were Protestant or something like that. So when they talk about like rivalries, it's a little deeper, and it can probably get a little bit messy.
That makes sense.
And probably even more messy if there's some beer involved or scotch.
Yeah. There's a couple things about the Wrexham thing too, is they covered it in one of the episodes where they're a small town and they get together. They like go on road trips. So if they go play another club 2 hours away or 4 hours away, they all like meet in the fans do. Yeah. Not every citizen, but the fans, the ones that are really into it, they meet in the middle of the town, get on buses, and all drive out 4 hours and go to the game.
Caravan to the game.
There was one time they went to a game that was like 3 or 4 hours away where a guy got got off by himself, one of the fans, and they drink in that town. They're allowed to drink at the stadium, and he got jumped. So like at Wrexham, they're a little bit like, let's try to keep alcohol out of it a little bit. So like nobody goes crazy. And then they also have a bar that's right by the stadium that where like that is the place to drink. So they don't want to pull people away from him. They don't want to hurt his business because it's a small town. They're like, they care about his business. Yeah. So like, that's where everybody goes before and after the game. And they don't want to pull people away from him.
Well, I also heard in that interview that they want to build a new stadium too. And you think if they're going to build a new like state-of-the-art stadium or whatever, unless they're just going to build it small, they're going to want to serve alcohol to get the money back for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's really cool. It's something that we don't experience here.
No,
is that it's so it's so town oriented and so kind of brotherly in a way, you know.
Yeah.
It seems a lot. It seems like it would be fun to be a part of.
I had season tickets to the Rams for the first 3 years that they came back here, and it seemed like of the Rams fans that are there, and even the other fans, 75% of the people are just going there to get fucking shit canned, like, and watch football. But like the football is kind of second to like how many beers can I get in my system before the game starts, because the beers are $15 here.
Jason, do you like it in Scotland? Do you find yourself staying there, or are you going to come back to the States one day?
Yeah, indefinitely. We'll be here for a bit. Yeah, I mean, I can't really say for how long, but you know, there's obviously things I miss from the U.S. I miss the U.S. sports. Like it's impossible to watch baseball, basketball, hockey because it's on at like 1, 2 a.m. I miss Mexican food. There's they don't have good Mexican food. And obviously, you know, family and friends and stuff like that. But yeah, I won't get into politics and things like that too. But there are some things that I don't miss from the U.S. But yeah,
do they have Mexican food in Chicago?
Oh, great Mexican food. Yeah.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's
I don't think I've ever tried any.
Yeah. So just like any big city, you kind of have your little pockets of neighborhoods. So we have Ukrainian Village, we have Greek Town, Italian, Little Italy, Chinatown. Pilsen is sort of the Hispanic Latino area, and yeah, fucking great. Oh, I just dropped an F-bomb. Sorry.
No worries.
Beep that out. Beep that out.
That's fucking okay.
Okay. Fucking good Mexican food. Yeah. Which you know it's good Mexican food when they got corn tortillas, and they do not do the corn tortillas in the UK. It's all wheat.
What about the pizza out there? What's the
pizza
best spot?
is Luigi's Pizzeria. Just had it tonight actually. So they were founded I can't tell you how long ago by Papa Luigi from Italy. So it's authentic Italian pizza. So it's definitely not Chicago style. But it's like it's really good. Yeah. So shout out to Luigi's.
None of that crappy deep dish Chicago style.
Yeah, no, everyone.
I actually like that.
I love that. You don't like it? You don't
No.
like? Oh my god,
I don't like it.
That's
I don't think anyone from Chicago likes it. To be honest.
Oh, is that right?
It's one of those novelties. Where like, oh, Chicago deep dish pizza, and you're like, yeah. It's one of the like you have one slice, and then you're like, okay, that's
exactly.
I'm done.
Go take a nap after that.
Yeah, but there's definitely the other Chicago thing. No ketchup on a hot dog. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog.
No, never.
Absolutely not.
I put a lot of ketchup on my hot dog.
You put a hot dog on your ketchup.
There you go.
Yeah, I probably do. You can probably say that.
That's funny.
All right. Well, yeah, we've been talking a lot about machine learning and life in general. I have one more question for you, because it kind of reminded me. You were talking about machine learning, and you had the analogy of taking tests. It reminded me of my daughter when she studies for tests for high school, where she like hides the answer for herself. Like I have the answer, and then I ask her the question. And it reminded me, like, we're that's a human being doing machine learning.
Yeah.
So are we in a simulation? Is that, what do you think of that? Since you would probably know more than anybody. Is there data behind that?
I can't tell you.
That sounds like you know.
Yeah, no, it's one of that's. Man, we got really philosophical here, didn't we?
Oh, I didn't mean to. You don't have to answer. I think we are. The more and more that I think about it, like I feel like we are, because that analogy was perfect. We are, when we're studying for a test, we're actually using ourselves as a machine learning.
Yeah,
I guess we're doing that a lot. We are a machine that's learning constantly
in a way.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I didn't mean to get this weird, but
the other aspect of it though too is because that does bring up a good point of, you know, one thing we didn't learn, and I think they should start teaching in universities is using data ethically, because we are manipulated daily on how companies use data. I mean, there's a few at Netflix. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but they kind of just go through the whole thing of like literally right now, my phone just lit up for no reason other than it wants me to pick it up and look at it. And and it works because I checked to see, okay. But yeah, we are literally manipulated daily. Basic. I mean, heck, we're doing it at Heineken, right? Getting people to the bar to drink certain drinks. And that, so.
Well, you mentioned ChatGPT. I mean, even that's manipulated, obviously, because someone has to program that for it to learn. But there's certain, I've messed around with a lot, and you can ask it certain questions that it won't answer. But if you ask it about a different person, it will answer the question.
You can, you can definitely spin it in a way to make you, give you the answer.
Pretty crazy. But then you can kind of people have figured out how to jailbreak it and make it do it. But
I know you said that you use it a lot for coding now, huh?
Yeah, I do. So like in terms of just instead of going to Stack Overflow that we talked about earlier, I'll type it into ChatGPT, and then just copy and paste it in. Oh, it gave me this error. Give it back to ChatGPT, and then it fixes it. Yeah. So it definitely does change your way of working. So I do work a little bit quicker now.
I believe it.
Yeah. So
I actually had a question for my doctor one time that he couldn't answer. And I'm like, I bet you can find it on ChatGPT. And he's like, what's that? And I explained it to him. Then next time I saw him, he's like, oh, that was like super interesting. Like, I think that's a way better way than like try to search it on Google or something. Cause Google, it rates what it shows you. So
because they have incentive to have people pay to have theirs.
So my doctor was like, oh, thank you for showing that.
He uses it all the time now.
Probably.
It's funny because when you visit the doctor, they're like sitting there on their computers basically asking you questions the whole time. That would be great if it had another screen that was just ChatGPT. You ask them a question, they're like, let's find out.
Why is Scott's penis red and burning?
He plays with it a lot. All right. Well, thanks, Jason. That's a weird note to end on, but thanks for coming on. And I've learned a ton. I learned so much. No offense to everybody else, but I think episode 19 might be my favorite.
I loved it.
Yeah.
He's going to stay on though for the rest of it.
Yeah, you're going to hang out.
I definitely want to. Yeah, I want to hang out.
Yeah, cool.
We just got a couple more things we're going to go over. The first thing, I think we need an upgrade report on the props. Do you have something, Jake?
I just want to say that we're making progress on all the bots thanks to Jason's help. He's done an incredible job. Basically, when I was originally reaching out on Stack Overflow trying to get help, there was multiple questions that nobody would even attempt, and Jason was answering them. Like, it seemed like they were easy for him. And I don't know, I'm amazed at what you've been doing and how you've been helping us. And honestly, our product's going to be a lot better over time because of you. So I just want to give you a shout out and thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah. Let's keep it up. We're on the rise.
Yes, sir. It's basically us against Vegas, whoever's going to create better lines, So
yeah, it's great. It's fun to see it grow like that and build.
I got you guys minus 110.
On the bet, you're betting on us?
Yes, betting on you guys.
So you're betting on us.
It's close though, minus 110. So
yeah, that's kind of a little closer than I wanted to be. But okay. Well, what about you? Are you betting on yourself on social media? We're gonna move Chris's corner up right now.
Yeah, social media is, nothing new to report really. Instagram's going pretty well. We had someone hit us up from one of the betting websites to ask us to maybe do a little advertisement for them on our show or on Twitter. So I had to suss that out and see how legit it is, but that's pretty good. And then so you get in these groups on Twitter of people that like and retweet each other's stuff. And some guy hit me up actually this morning, and he has close to 100,000 followers, which is the most out of any, because I'm in 3 other groups, but the most anyone had in there was like 20 grand. And that guy's got almost 100,000 followers. And he personally invited me into his group, or us into his group, to like and retweet and comment on each other's, and that it just helps you grow, because the way the algorithm works is like the more engagement you have, the more people will end up seeing it. So we're getting a lot more. Like when we get into later talking about the poll that we did, we had over 10,000 views and 600 people vote on it, which is by far the best that we've had on anything. And over the engagements on it were something like 6 or 7. No, they were like 900, because 600 people commented, and then a bunch of people liked and retweeted it. So
let's get into it now.
So the 2 polls we did last week, the first one was should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? So Jason, actually, what do you think? Should he be in the Hall of Fame?
I say yes.
Okay, there was 66 over 600 votes, and 84% of the people said he should get in the Hall of Fame. So I backed that up with will he get into the Hall of Fame? What do you think the people said? And what would you say?
I would say I'm gonna guess that people will say no. I'm gonna say yes with the stipulation of once he passes away, they'll put him in.
Oh,
dude, that's a perfect. Okay, so yes, so they said
unfortunately that's what would happen. Yeah.
So they said no by a margin of 53% to 47%, and the most common comment was in there. The people that said he will get in was after he dies, and that's what I said on the last podcast too. It was after he dies, he will get in. So yeah, I was surprised though that people said he wouldn't get in, but I think I could have worded it a little different because I said I started with the people have decided Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. And then I asked the question. I think if I would have just asked, will he get in? It probably would have turned it the other way. But it's a lot closer than should he be in, which is good. Because Pete, we're trying to get you on the show. And if you're listening, the people say you should be in the Hall of Fame. And we agree. Will you get in? If you come on the show, I think it'd be a lot better chance.
Yeah, it's 53% no right now, but if you come on the show, we can flip the scales.
Yeah, we can flip that for you.
I brought up this morning, Jason, that we were trying to get Pete Rose on, and you brought up some good points.
The points that I brought up is right. The Hall of Fame is based on your performance as a player. He bet as a manager, right? So no, you're not going to get in as a Hall of Fame manager just because your credentials weren't that good as a manager anyway. But you performed and you didn't cheat performing. There's some other players that aren't in the Hall of Fame that have cheated, and that's going to be the reason why they initially don't get in. There's also players that suspected of cheating that are in, and then you're going to say this guy has the most hits of all the accolade, what you try to do, what's the number of hits as a player that you're trying to get to? 3,000. This guy has 4,000.
I think it's 4,256 because some guy commented. Because every day I'm doing another thing where I'm going like day 13 of asking Pete Rose to come on our podcast, and some guy commented on it. He's like, he'll come on one day, keep trying. I'm like, I will stop if I reach day number 4,256. That's how many hits he has. So like 10 years from now, I'm going to stop. If he doesn't come
3,000. 3,000 is the milestone.
I know,
and he's 1,000 over that, and you're going to say, he bet.
And just the way he played too. He was like Charlie Hustle's his nickname. Like. He played super hard, played multiple positions. I think he played catcher in second, and then right?
Yeah,
He
played more than that. I think. I think he was kind of like a utility.
Yeah, so like what he bet on his team to win too. That's just the stupid part. It's not like he bet him to lose, which that actually leads us into the next question. The next poll that I'm going to do is going to be, if your team was playing in the championship, would you bet against them to lose?
That is a good question. I like that.
Yeah.
So are we saying what we would
what we think the public?
What we think the
public, and then we can say what we would pick. What Jason go. What do you think the public's going to say they would bet against their team to win the championship?
I'm going to guess the public would not bet against their team. I personally would. Because I look at because here's my rationale though. If they lose, I'm heartbroken, but then I win some money.
So
it's a win-win.
So not recently, but back when the Lakers had Kobe, because I love the Lakers, but I don't really care for LeBron. So I still want them to win the championship. But when Kobe would play, I would literally put like $20 or $50 on whatever who they were playing against in the game, because if the Lakers won, whatever, I lost $20. If they lose, I make money.
Yep.
All right, Scott, what do you?
I'm the same. I'm the same boat.
You would bet against your team?
I would bet against my team. Yeah, if it's part of the model, I would definitely do it. And then, but I also think that the public will say that they won't.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm in the same boat. Yeah. I would totally bet against my team if it lines up. There's no reason why not to. If anything, I might have more information on why. Like I might have a better feel because it's my team and it lines up with the model. Then of course I would take it.
I'd love to look at the stats, but I probably bet against my team like 50 to 100 times a year. It's got to be.
Yeah, I believe it.
Year round. But Chris, what do you think?
I think the public's going to say no, they wouldn't, but I would and have. So.
Yeah, and I'll add this too. I hope that that's the case. I hope that the poll comes out saying that they would not bet on their team, because if the poll comes out that they says that they would, then as far as like my betting goes, I being a contrarian, I need to like reevaluate. Okay. And in the last like 45 days, I've like thought about that because things haven't been going according to what they normally go. I started to think like, is this public data, is there something amiss, like something's up with this? So I'm interested to see what this poll is.
So I could do 2 again this week. I could do after that one, and then I could do another one. Have you bet on your team to lose?
Yeah, we should. Yeah,
and then have you? I don't know. I would say no. Definitely, it would be on that for the win from the public.
Yeah, yeah, I'm interested to see.
And we all have, so bet against our team. So yeah. So I'll do 2 again this week then.
Start collecting this data.
Yeah,
I like it. All right. Well, let's go. Do we have any questions from the listeners? Do we have a mailbag this week?
Yeah, this is kind of a weird one. All right. So should I try to ride your guys' runs, whether they're hot or cold, like lower my bet size or raise my bet size based on whether you guys are hot or cold?
I would do it more on his bankroll personally.
Yeah, that's
the size of the bankroll dictates the size of the bet.
And you guys are already putting out what the bet to your bankroll size is. So I just want to.
And I'm lowering stars when it's cold too, and I'm decreasing the volume when it's cold. So
let you guys make that decision then.
Yeah, but they can do it too. So that's the beauty of it. Yeah. Like if we're cold, you don't have to take every bet. Like
it's whatever you feel comfortable with. I think you were even saying before we came on that like some of the picks, like you were doing half bets on some of them.
Well, that's because I'm not getting the line, so not enough counts, which I wasn't doing before, but I've started doing is if I can't get the exact bet, I'm either not betting it or before I was lowering my stars, but some now if it's like, minus 120, but I can only get it at minus 150, then I'm not betting it.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's within 10, I'm betting it. Like you say, if it's within 20, I'm lowering my stars. If it's within 30, I'm really lowering my stars. When it's 30 or over, I'm out.
And the important thing with that is you have rules that you set up.
Yeah.
You've set up your own rules. And that's what we always say. It's kind of like the stars are a guideline, but set up your own rules for it. Mm-hmm. Jake, did you want to, I skipped the bloopers and blunders. This is a new segment that we have never done before. But did you want to have something on that?
Yeah. I know all you guys have had hiccups at one time or another. I was just curious what you've done to try to get rid of your hiccups.
Actual hiccups?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you threw me off with this.
Yeah. It'll be sports related at the end.
How do I get rid of hiccups?
Yeah.
God, I don't really have hiccups that often. I mean, the weirdest thing that I've done, I probably talked myself into jerking off. Because I mean that's just like keeps your mind off of it. Because if you think about it, like if you're like, hey, I'm gonna scare you or hold your breath, all the things are like taking your mind off of it. And if you completely take your mind, that's how I get my mind off of anything. So it wasn't just a joke. It was like actual, like that's how you get your mind off.
Does it work or what?
Let's find out. No.
Yeah, I was just bringing it up because apparently there's a new method that people are trying out, and Bo Jackson apparently sniffed a porcupine's butt to try to pick up.
And it works?
I don't think it worked, but it was worth the effort, I guess.
Maybe a skunk's ass he just fucking sniff.
Yeah, I don't know.
You should have talked to me before because I think my process is a little
To be fair, he had the hiccups for nearly a year. So I'm going to say he's tried some of your methods there, Scott, and probably everything else under the sun.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
So I got
Bo
2 actually.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
The Bo Jackson. I didn't know about the porcupine thing. I heard about it. I heard he was going to have like a surgery or something. But 2 that have worked that I learned from my family in Ohio, because we used to go out there and get pretty fucking wasted the entire time we were out there. But a spoonful of mustard, or you take a cup and you put a napkin over the top of it and you like try to get the water out through the napkin. And both those have worked a couple times, but since I've got them since then, and that doesn't work. I think it's like like Scott was saying, like like get your thought off it. So it's something like a spoonful of mustard. So you never do that before, and you forget about your hiccups, and they go away. So.
Sniffing a porcupine's butt will get your mind off it too. I heard.
Yeah, and it worked.
No, I don't think it worked.
Oh, okay. So that happened to Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson.
He's had hiccups for a year.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is it from archery? Because he's into archery.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's like a professional archer.
Yeah. No way.
And he makes his own bow and arrows and stuff. Like, it's crazy. There's I think it's a 30-30 on them or something like that, with him showing them carving out the arrows.
I saw that too.
Interesting. Do you have anything funny, any of you guys, or Jason?
The one thing that popped up over here in the UK is, again, we were talking about Wrexham, and then they threw that big Las Vegas party for him. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but there's some pictures up on them. So you have Ryan Reynolds. He's not there, but it's Rob McElhenney, which is a whole nother funny thing too. The pronunciations of his name over here are ridiculous. So, but there's a picture of him with the team poolside, no shirts, and all the responses to it said. So here's one response: why is Rob more jacked than his players?
Wow.
How is Rob more shredded than all the professional athletes half his age? Because if you go to it, like, I didn't even realize he was in there. I'm like, which one's him? And then I'm like, holy shit. Yeah, he is jacked. And he's it's unbelievable. But yeah, so I thought it was just funny that, let's see, what was the last comment? So it looks like Tozer Ben, so that the captain, Ben Tozer, and Rob are having a who is more shredded competition.
That's hilarious.
And then finished it off with, so Rob and his wife were there. And obviously the UK skin tone that Chris is very familiar with. They're just lathering up all the players like a 4-year-old with 50 SPF, because they're all going to be sunburns down in Vegas.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I can believe it.
I got one that we can leave the show with, and it's something that Jeff Van Gundy said in the game last night, and that is, you can't just stick your ball in another man's face.
Yeah, you don't want to do that, especially in the NBA. They got to be some giant balls. Well, yeah, that's a great one to end the show on. Next week, Jason, thanks for coming on the show. This has been my favorite one. I learned so much about this. I took a bunch of notes. Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's been an honor, Jason.
Definitely. Yeah. Next week we're going to cover law. We're going to go over the law of the federal government in America pertaining to sports betting, and then also a little bit in California law for sports betting. So that is next week. And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms at YouBetSmart. Sign up Dub Club. It's $10 a month. Everybody who got $50 a month in the last couple months, you're going to get some free months up ahead. And thanks for listening, guys.